Well, hello, Harmony class. We're back with more of Chapter 6. This is the video for Wednesday, where we're going to study moving from chords that are a fourth or a fifth apart. The roots are a fourth or a fifth apart. This is some of the more tricky part writing in this chapter. And so, in order to help you avoid parallelism and maybe even spacing issues and things like that, the author has provided 3 methods for you to move with roots a fourth and fifth apart. And you can see he numbers them 1, 2, and 3. We will call them affectionately method 1 and method 2 and method 3. All right, now first of all, we're talking about roots a fourth and fifth apart. So in example 6-2 here, you can see that the root moves down from G to C, a fifth apart, all right? And up here, we start on F, we go up to C, a fifth apart, that type thing. So when roots are a fourth or a fifth apart, you can use these 3 methods. So method 1 would be to maintain a common tone. And you can see the 5 chord and the 1 chord both have a common tone of G in C major, all right? C, E, G, and G, B, D. So he's kept the G in the alto voice. Now you don't have to tie that. He's just putting a tie there to remind you that there's a common tone. And then you take the other 2 voices, not the one that's the common tone, but the other 2. Remember, we're going to give you the 2 roots, so you won't have to worry about part writing the bass part. So you find the common tone, then the other 2 voices are going to move stepwise in contrary motion to the bass. Notice the bass is going downhill, so these 2 other parts are going to go uphill by step, contrary motion. All right, so that's a good way to do your part writing. Here again, in the second example, the bass part is going uphill as you move from 4 to 1. All right, and he's going to take, the common tone is C here, F-A-C, and C-E-G. So he's kept the common tone in the tenor voice. You can see that there. And then the other 2 parts, he moves down by step, contrary motion to the bass. So whenever it's possible, with method 1, keep a common tone and move the other 2 parts in contrary motion to the bass. In method 2, all 3 upper parts are going to move in similar motion, with no part moving or leaping greater than a third. So here's an example of method 2. You can see the bass coming uphill in letter A over here. Try and do this upside down. There we go. In letter A, the bass comes uphill, so the upper 3 parts go downhill with no leap greater than a third. The bass goes down in letter B, so the upper 3 parts, am I saying that right? Yeah, the upper 3 parts in letter B are going up. In letter C, you have a little bit of a predicament. If you're going to use method 2, the bass comes uphill, going 5 to 1. The upper 3 parts should then go down if you're going to write method 2, but you'll notice he's got the leading tone there shaded in the 5 chord. And that is a sort of an ethical dilemma because leading tones are supposed to resolve up by step. But if you're going to write method 2, and I'm going to back you into a corner, I'm going to make you write method 2 on a quiz or a homework or whatever, you're going to have to frustrate the normal resolution of the leading tone. Now the only place where you can get away with that is in an inside voice. Notice that frustration of the leading tone over here is in a tenor voice. It's in the inside voice. If this were, the B were in the soprano, you couldn't write method 2. You couldn't come downhill jumping down like that because leading tones resolve up by step. But since it's in an inside part, a tenor part or an alto part, you can get away with frustrating the resolution of the leading tone. You still can't double it, but you can frustrate it in this special situation in order to write a method 2. So method 2, you take the upper 3 parts and you move them downward in contrary motion to the bass, and or upward in contrary motion to the bass. Here the bass comes up, upper 3 parts go down. Bass goes down in letter B, upper 3 parts go up. Bass goes up, upper 3 parts go down, and that's the one where you had to frustrate that leading tone, and it was okay in method 2 as long as it's in an inside part. Okay, and then method 3 is kind of interesting. He calls this a tertian leap, keeping a common tone and moving the other voice in stepwise motion. So, okay, let's see if we can figure out what that all means. Tertian's just a big fancy word for the third. So what you're going to do is you're going to identify the third of the first chord. Okay, in example 6-4, the third is E in that C major chord. You can see it right there. And then you're going to leap to the third of the next chord, F, A, C. So you're going to keep the third in the same voice. So the soprano sings the third here, and then she sings the third up there, and you leap up from the third to the third. That's called a tertian leap. You keep the third of the chord in the same voice. So you couldn't put the third of the second chord like down in the alto or something. That would be mixing the voices. Keep the third in the soprano here and leap to the third in the soprano. Here he does it again. The third is up here in the soprano, leaps down to the third in the soprano. Now we get to a little bit of an ethical dilemma here, because here's a leading tone again in the 5 chord, G, B, D. Well, if you're going to write method 3, you're supposed to leap up to the third of the next chord. So you can see he's got the leading tone in a tenor part, in an inside part, and he leaps up to the third of the next chord. That's called frustrating the leading tone. We want to try and avoid doing that if we can at all help ourselves. But here, in order to write method 3, we get away with it because it's tucked away in an inside part. So in method 3, you find a common tone between the 2 chords. Same thing as we did for method 1. We leap from the third of the first chord to the third of the second chord, either uphill or downhill. And then we have one voice left that we haven't dealt with yet. That voice moves by step. So you can see in this first example here, he's done all 3 of those things. He's leaped from the third of this chord to the third of this chord. He's kept a common tone in the alto voice, and down here in the tenor voice, he moves it down by step. Okay? So that's called method 3, and that's a good way to part write when you move between chords that are a fourth and fifth apart. And your homework, this is not the homework, but this is just an example of what the homework is going to look like. You're going to have chords to part write. You're going to have to get from this 1 chord to the 4 chord in D major. And this line up top here is for the method that you choose. Now, there may be more than one method that works, method 1, 2, or 3. And I encourage you to try all 3 of the methods as you're doing your homework, because on the Chapter 6 quiz, I will give you a set of problems that says, show me all 3 methods of part writing. So it would be good to have your text right next to your homework as you're doing this and experiment with all 3 methods. Now you might find as you're part writing some of these that maybe one of the 3 methods or 2 of the 3 methods don't work. So it might be like a trial and error thing where you do the part writing going from chord to chord and you put the method up here that you are using. So about the homework, it is going to be workbook page 43, and you know what, there's a tiny little bit of part writing on the back on 44. We'll skip that. Let's just do workbook page 43, and as promised, here are the part writing situations where you have to go from this chord, 5 chord, to the 1 chord, and you have to show which method you used to get from there to there. So don't just slap notes in there and hope for the best. Look at the 3 methods and predetermine, hey, I think I'm going to try method 1 here, where I keep a common tone and the other 2 voices move in contrary motion to the bass by step. Or I'm going to try method 2, where all 3 voices move in contrary motion to the bass, with nobody leaping greater than a third. Or I'm going to try method 3, where we do a tertian leap. You go from the third of the first chord to the third of the second chord in the same voice. Common tone with the other voice, stepwise with the third voice. All right, well that's it for the middle of chapter 6. God bless you.